Everybody's Charles, your hobby hero, and today we're covering the second ink in our series of profiling the ink colors now that the full set is revealed. Today we're going to be covering Sapphire, which for me personally really flew under the radar until the full set of cards was revealed. Before we hop into that list though, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I do appreciate it. I do put out regular content about the hobbies that I love the most, with this channel being dedicated to the card games that I play. Now, without further ado, we're going to jump into the list. Now, granted, this has only been out for a couple of days now. I have played a couple of games, and honestly, blue is getting stronger and stronger for me personally by the day. I'd like to share with you some of those cards that we have on there. Again, we're using dreamborn.ink for the visual spoiler here. Check them out. You can do deck builders on here as well. Starting from low cost, going to high cost, first we have Flounder, Voice of Reason. He is a 2/2 for 1 that's inkable for 1. No interactions with any other cards. Stat-wise, this guy is not going to be a constructed playable card. Dies to pretty much every form of removal. Doesn't really generate enough lore to draw attention, and honestly doesn't have any stats that'll get him there in a challenge either. Again, this is just kind of limited chaff here. Develop Your Brain. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. The card is basically Sleight of Hand from Magic the Gathering, if you're familiar with that. It is inkable and it is a 1-drop, so it's a good turn 1 play where you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one of them to your hand and the other on the bottom of your deck, basically replacing this card for 1 with the best of the top 2 cards of your deck. It's never going to be a bad card. I just don't know if there's going to be a room in decks to play this one, especially with such favorable mulligan rules. I guess if you miss what you're looking for on your mulligan, this gives you a chance turn 1 to go 2 cards deeper to get to that piece. Personally, I don't think I will be playing this card, but I can understand those who may put it in there. Work Together for 1, again inkable. One of your characters gains support. I'm a big fan of the support ability. I just don't think I want to play a one-time use action to get it. I think this card's pretty bad on the surface. I don't really see any application for it going forward either. Support could get more important later down the road, but I think this is probably not the card you're going to want to use to get there. Our next one up is Magic Golden Flower, another 1-drop healing pollen item. Item with the ability Healing Pollen. There we go. Banish this item. Remove up to 3 damage from a chosen character. I think right now we do not have a whole lot of need for for healing. We have a lot of characters that really just don't have enough on the back end to where they're going to survive being able to remove 3 damage from them. And a lot of the removal spells that are getting played right now are just straight removal. Could there be an opportunity for this to rise? It is a 1-drop item, which if you're playing the item build is a very cheap way to draw a card off of that mechanic. But for me personally, I don't think this card is going to make the cut. Mostly because if you want a 1-drop item, Scepter of Arendelle is probably where you want to look. This one has the ability Command. You can exert this item. Chosen character gains support this turn, which I do really like. I think this is probably one of the better items in the game right now. And the fact that it's a 1-drop and inkable, just all the way around solid card. I think if you're playing the item build, this is probably your cheap cantrip item, which also allows you to use that support ability because a lot of the item abilities require that character to quest as well, adding extra value to the Scepter of Arendelle as well. We have Aurora here at 2. She's a 2/2 for 2 lore generation. Again, I don't think stat-wise she's going to get there. She does have the added benefit that you can shift up to the 5-drop Aurora. However, at 5, I don't know that you necessarily need to shift up to the 5-drop Aurora, and I honestly don't like the idea of shifting that particular Aurora because she gives all of your other characters ward, which means she puts a giant target on her head, and if you shift it into her, any removal that hits her is going to be a 2 for 1. So I'm not a big fan of shifting that one. I am a big fan of the 5-drop Aurora, but I don't think I want to play the 2-drop, especially a bad 2-drop, to get there sooner. Now this card right here is a big reason, maybe the reason why I changed my opinion on blue once the full set released, and that is Grandma Tala. She is a 1/1 for 2 inkable, 1 lore generator, nothing special there, but her ability, I'll be with you, when this card is banished, any way, shape, size, or form banished, you may put this card into your inkwell face down and exerted, effectively ramping yourself. So she's either going to get killed immediately because she's so small, or she's going to allow you to quest for lore like she had evasive for 1 till the end of the game. But you can also challenge with her. She's going to most likely die in that challenge, and then ramp her as well. So you really do get the option on how you want to use her. I really like this card, and it really accelerates that curve into some of the bigger 4 drops, 5 drops, and 6 drops with blue as your primary color here. Felicities, we have a 2-drop here. He's a 3/1. I'm not a fan of 1 at all with the ability to support. He's only questing for 1 lore. He is throwing a lot of support around. If you're playing red and playing kind of a reckless challenger deck, this guy may fit in there, sort of. I really just don't think you want to put yourself in a position with a 1 willpower character at this point, just because there's every number of ways to trade favorably with that. So I'm not a huge fan of him. I could see some support later, but I don't think that this guy is constructed playable right now. 1 jump ahead. Similar to Grandma Tala, this is a ramp spell for 2. It is not inkable, however, and it puts the top card of your deck into the inkwell face down. If we did not have the other ramp spells we have, I am a fan of this one, just because it's taking from the top of your deck, so it is actually giving you a resource from your hand. However, you don't have a body attached to this one, which I think makes this the worst one, because you're playing a card from your hand still, just like you would play a resource from your hand. The advantage is you're just going to be able to basically play 2 resources in 1 turn with this card. However, with Grandma Tala, and we'll see Inspector Mickey later, they actually leave a body on the board as well, which I really like those, and I don't think the deck currently need to run 3 of. Coconut Basket, this is another item for 2. It is inkable whenever it's in play. And you play another character, you can heal 2 damage off of another chosen character. I don't think the healing is super necessary right now. However, this one doesn't get banished. To do its effect, you can keep using it over and over again, and it's a cheap item. Again, if you're building that item build for Sapphire, I really like this item, especially since at that top end of that deck, it has some really high toughness, willpower, characters. So I do like this one. Again, it's cheap, it's an item, can cantrip off of Maurice, and the reoccurring ability is nice to have around even if it doesn't trigger often. Belle, the 3-drop Belle here. She's a 2/3 for 3, inkable with 2 lore generation tinker. Whenever this character quests, you may pay 1 less for the next item you play this turn. I don't know that that deck runs enough items to include her. However, she does have 3 willpower, which is nice. 2 lore generations, not bad. I think you can probably play her in that item build, just stats wise alone. She's probably good enough. And the fact that every once in a while it's going to be relevant to reduce the cost of that item is not bad either. Next one up is Jasmine, a 3/3 for 3, inkable with 2 lore. She is another target for a higher cost Jasmine that can shift from her, but again, that Jasmine is at 5. I'm not a big fan of shifting from 3 to 5. Doesn't save you a ton of resources, and honestly, the Jasmine and the Aurora, neither one of them really benefit from coming in basically with haste. So I don't like the idea of getting 2 for 1 in those scenarios. I think Jasmine's fine body-wise and lore-wise if you need some filler, especially since the fact that she is inkable. I don't think she makes the cut in most lists, but if you find yourself in need of another body, I think she is a decent body. I would not play her, though, if the intent is to shift up into that bigger Jasmine. Next one up is Mickey Mouse Detective, the 1/3 for 3, uninkable. When he comes into play, he has the ability to get a clue, which takes the top card of your life deck and puts it into your inkwell with a lore of 1. I think this guy was initially pretty looked down upon for this deck, because you don't get to see what card it is. If it is a combo piece, you could have just buried it. You don't get to choose any of this. You don't know what the counts are in your deck any longer, because that's a missing card with no information. And I was kind of in that bandwagon too. However, the fact that this has a body, not a super relevant body, and then also advances your inkwell position and allows you to put two resources into the inkwell in one turn, I really have come around to this guy, especially in tandem with the other ramp spells that this thing has. This guy allows you to get to your 5 and 6 drops very, very regularly on your turns 3 and 4. So I'm a big fan of this guy. This guy has completely changed my opinion. A lot of that has to do with the support of Grandma Tala coming in. But even without it, I think being able to play around a little bit and see how important it is to be putting a resource from the top of your deck rather than your hand really has made a bigger impact than I originally gave this guy credit for. If it's not Baroque, 3-drop action, non-inkable, return item card from your discard to your hand. I don't know of any item card that I care enough to pay 3 for to get it back. If it was even destroyed in the first place, this card's just bad. If it was inkable, it might have a spot in the item build deck, but it's not, which means it could just be a completely dead card in your hand. Not a fan at all. All right, next one up is the Fishbone Quill. Another item for 3. This one is inkable with the ability to go ahead and sign. You can exert it, put any card from your hand into your inkwell face down. I do like that this can get the uninkable cards from your hand face down. I think, again, it's probably the 3rd best ramp option that we have. If you're playing like the aggressive Bell, get to 10, you may need something past Mickey and Grandma Tala. But if you're not, I think this is probably not going to make the cut most times. So it kind of depends on what you're building for. I like the card. I like the ability. I like that it can turn potentially dead cards in your hand into a resource. I just think it is the 3rd best option that we have for ramp right now. And most of the ramp decks I've seen don't need 3 ramp options. Next up is Ariel, 4-drop. She is uninkable. She's a 3/3 for 1 lore. She has the ability to look at this stuff whenever you play an item. You may ready this character. I do really like that ability. I really wish for the fact that she isn't inkable that we could have gotten 2 lore generation on her. And I think she would have been a really nice card to build around. As it stands, I don't think 1 lore generation is enough to make her relevant. I just don't think the item decks are playing enough items. And if they are, even playing enough items, I don't think getting extra 1 lore generating or being able to protect her after she generates lore is really worth her inclusion in a deck, especially since she's not inkable. Next up is 4-drop Aurora, Briar Rose. She's a 2/5, 1 lore generator. She is inkable with the ability Disarming Beauty. When you play this character, chosen character gets a -2 strength this turn. So if you are playing a deck and you are challenging, she allows you to drop the attack on a character. I think this ability could be good. I think right now it's not super necessary. And then the fact that she's not much of a challenger herself leaves a lot to be desired here. Again, if she had had 2 lore, I could excuse playing her in here as a kind of a tech piece. But unfortunately, I don't think the ability she has is worth the trade-off of being a 1 lore generator. Even with the big toughness that she has or the willpower that she has, I just don't think it's adequate to include her in any list. Belle was another late spoil for blue here. She's a 4-drop, 2/4, 1 lore generator with the ability read a book. During your turn, you may put an additional card from your hand into your inkwell face down. Here is another really strong ramp spell here. Obviously, this particular card is looking for a different number for ramp than like just any run-of-the-mill ramp. This one is trying to get to 10 because of her second ability. While you have 10 or more cards in your inkwell, this character gets a +4 lore generation, so she is turning sideways for 5 lore generation when she is questing. I think some of the big blue-red builds could build around this particular bell because they are trying to get up to your 7 and 9 drop much more consistently versus some of the green ramp decks or purple ramp decks that are out there that really can stop around 6 or 7. She is going to want to take full advantage of that, so I think that's probably a good home for her. Obviously, very devastating if she starts turning sideways for 5 lore generation. And again, you just want to make sure that you have a good card draw engine with her, because she is allowing you to ramp an extra 1 per turn, but she's not replacing that card, and it's not from the top of your deck, so you'd have to be putting 2 cards down. So you want to make sure that you're playing plenty of cards that can draw, plenty of cards that can be added to your inkwell as well. Next one up is Maleficent, 4 drop. She's a 3/4 for 2 lore. Decent stats all the way around. I think most colors just have better options in 4 versus playing a 3/4 for 2 that is inkable. If you're not in that situation, she's fine. Her body is decently costed for those stats. But I think, especially if you're in blue and you're ramping, you're probably just going to ramp right over this relevance. And if you're comboed with another color, you're probably just going to put another 4 drop in there instead of her. Merlin is a 3/4 for 4 with 1 lore with the ability support. Really like this support. Unfortunately, I don't think it is worth the lore trade-off. He's only going to be generating 1 lore and then passing 3 over. I am hopeful that challenging becomes more in depth than it currently is. The removal is really good in set 1, and the bodies are pretty squishy, so there's not a whole lot of thought behind challenging right now. I think in the future challenging could get more intricate, more ward type effects, more benefit for challenging or more disadvantages for not being able to challenge. And I think an ability like support could become really relevant and maybe worth the trade-off. I don't think it is right now. Unfortunately, it would be a nice ability. Again, if he had 2 lore generation here, it'd put him on par with the other 4 drops, maybe a little understated, but then he could throw his strength around other characters and still probably find a home. But as is, I'm just not a huge fan. Number 4, or not number 4, at 4 we have Eye of Fates, another item for blue. You can exert it, chosen character gets +1 lore generation this turn. So basically an item that generates lore as long as you have a character in play that can generate lore. I don't dislike this card, and I think if you're playing the item build, this one probably has a home in there. Especially if you're playing Belle, you can catch up on lore generation really fast if you were far behind. And this card is the way you're going to get there. Then we have our 5-drop Aurora, the Dreaming Guardian. This lady is insane. She's a 3/5 at 2 lore generation. She is also inkable, which is great. She has that shift 3 ability that we talked about earlier. I don't think at 5 you really need to shift. Because what you really want her for is this second ability right here, which is Protective Embrace. Your other characters gain ward. So she does not gain ward, but everybody else does, which again paints a huge target on her. But if you're ramping into bigger characters or really strong tech pieces, she's going to make sure that they can't be targeted with any abilities until she is gone. Again, decent stats too. It's not like she sacrificed all of her stats for this ability. 2 lore generations, fine for a 5-drop, and that 5 willpower is going to make her very difficult to get rid of advantageously for your opponent. Donald Duck here, 4/3 for 5, 2 lore generation, and he already has the ability ward. I really wish this guy had 4 willpower. I would be a huge fan of this guy if he had 4 willpower at 3. You really just can't challenge with him very often, at least not favorably, which means smaller characters are going to be able to trade into him and take care of him, which kind of negates the ward. I really think ward is a very good card. I think if this guy was even a 3/4, I would have this guy as probably an auto include in most blue decks, and he still may be just good enough because of the ward. Just like I said, I'd be more excited about this card personally if this guy had 4 willpower instead of 3, and that would be literally the only thing it would take to make me really just appreciate the ward ability. Next one up is Jasmine, the 5-drop here, Queen of Agrabah. She is inkable for 2/5 with 2 lore generation. Again, shift 3, just like we discussed before. I don't think there is value in shifting this character. It's just a good way to get you 2 for 1. With the ability Caretaker, when you play this character and whenever she quests, you may remove 2 damage from each of your characters. This is a lot of healing on her ability. Again, we don't have a whole lot of need for healing. However, she can do it very efficiently without trading off a lot of stats. I think she's probably good enough to find her home in most blue decks just because of that. They're not going to see her coming because you're not shifting her from a smaller Jasmine, hopefully. And she's going to come into play with an immediate effect and then allow you to challenge favorably and then quest with her and then heal that 2 off of that challenge that you had before that. I really like that ability. Again, I think healing has a minimal impact right now, but she is efficient enough that I really like her ability. Maleficent here, the Uninvited. She's a 5-drop inkable, 3 strength, 6 willpower, 3 lore generator. This card is a vanilla card, but an insane vanilla card. Anytime you have solid stats with 3 lore generating, I am going to be a big fan of that card. So big fan of this one. Again, I think you can ramp to it very easily. She should come out at least 1 turn early, which really puts her ahead of any other deck that's not playing ramp. And again, you're just never going to be upset to see this card because she's, you know, such a huge swing every time she quests. And again, with that 6 willpower, she can trade favorably and survive most removal in the game as well. So no surprise, big fan of her. Think she'll be an easy include in most blue decks as well. Let It Go. This one, everybody has seen this card basically from the get-go. Spoiled very early on. It's a 5-drop and inkable, which is just crazy in and of itself. It's also a song, which means it can be played for free from exerting a character 5 or higher on their cost, and you can put any character into that player's inkwell face down and exert it. So it sends a character gone, goodbye, forever, permanently, 4/5. One of the best removal spells, if not the best removal spell in the game. Pretty much an auto include. I can't imagine why you would not put 4 of this in your deck, because again, if it is somehow dead in your hand, you can just put it into your inkwell, which makes it that much better. Going into number 6 here, we have Maurice. He is inkable for a 2/7. 2 lore generator. Give it a try. Whenever this character quests, you can pay 2 less for the next item that you play this turn. So it's got the beefed up bell ability here, and the ability it works whenever you play an item, you may draw a card. So this is kind of the draw engine for the item deck. If you're playing the item deck, you play this guy. If you're not playing the item deck, you don't play this guy. His stats are really not very impressive for a 6-drop. And you really want him in there for this draw engine. I've not played the item deck a ton myself. I have played against it a few times. He usually draws several cards because most people won't mess with him as a 6-drop. You usually have, you're not worried about him challenging any of your stuff, and he's got that 7 willpower, so unless you have a really big guy out there, you're probably not going to mess with swinging into him. So he's a pretty safe draw engine for that item deck. Again, you play him if you're playing it. You don't if you're not. Mufasa, another vanilla here, 6-drop, inkable, 4/6, 3 lore generation. Again, big body, same as the Maleficent over here. He costs 1 more, gets 1 more strength, and again, in ramp, should be down on turn 4 or 5, which puts him way ahead of the curve. Again, he's inkable, so it allows you to ink him early. If you draw him on curve, you can, again, catch up really fast. I really like these 3 lore generating characters a whole lot. I think Mufasa is a very solid body if you need a challenge at that point in the game as well. Leads us into Robin Hood here, 6-drop. Inkable 4/4 for 2 lore generation, Feed the Poor. Whenever you play this character, if an opponent has more cards in their hand than you, you can draw a card, and he gains evasive on your turn, which means he can attack or challenge into evasive characters. At 6, if you're not getting this draw card pretty consistently, I'm not a big fan of this guy. His stats, again, we have Mufasa here right next to him, who's got 2 more willpower and a whole nother lore generation. Honestly, like, I don't see a lot of scenarios where you want to take your 6-drop and to be swinging into an evasive character, especially since that evasive character is probably going to be smaller than your 6-drop. As far as cost value wise, like, you really want your 6-drops to be more impactful than, you know, your opponent's 4-drop that they played. If you can get the consistency of drawing off of the card, it's probably good enough, because card draw is just so good. Not a huge fan, though, from the times that I have played against him. He very rarely gets to draw the card, at least not advantageously. You're playing extra cards into your inkwell that you normally wouldn't, just to replace them with a blind draw off of the Robin Hood. So, like I said, it's not terrible. I think there's just a lot of better options in that 6-drop spot. We go to the next 6-drop, which is Scar. He is a 5/4 for 2 lore generating with the ability Insidious Plot. When you play this character, chosen opposing character gains -5 strength this turn. So he's a much bigger version of the Aurora, but I just don't think this ability is worth it. And again, this 6-drop spot, there's just better options. Again, I would rather play the 5-drop Maleficent pretty much any turn of the game versus the 6-drop Scar. And then again, you're going to be playing it in another color, which is also going to open up their 5 and 6 drops. There's just better options out there. I don't think this guy's got a home right now in Constructed. Same with Chief Tui here at 7. He is inkable. He is a 3/6 with 3 lore generation with the ability Support. For a 7-drop, I need more impact at that stage in the game. Like, the fact that he doesn't come into play and do anything body-wise, he's not, you know, very large for a 7-drop either. There are much bigger 7-drops in the game. 3 lore generation is nice, but again, we've already got a 6-drop 3 lore generator and a 5-drop 3 lore generator in the same color. So that is kind of, and that's not going to be the reason why you play this guy. Again, I think they overvalue for set 1 the support mechanic. I really just don't think this guy has a spot as of right now. However, Hades here at the 7-drop spot. Again, another late spoil here. Very big fan of this card. He is not inkable. He is a 3 strength, 6 willpower, 2 lore generator. With the ability, is there a downside to this? When you play this character, you may put chosen opposing character face down into their ink well. Now, he's basically a let it go, and really the only difference is this one isn't exerted. Not that it makes a ton of difference, because they have no real counterplay anyways at this point in time. But this guy is insane in ramp. He should be down by turn 5 if you're putting something down each turn to get him out. But just never going to be a dead card. He's always going to be able to tuck something of theirs away. Decent stat line as well. It can survive most removal. And with 2 lore generation, not bad as well. Having a removal spell, one of the better type of removal spells attached to this big of a body, is a huge boon, especially with a deck that can ramp him out ahead of just that natural 7 curve. Brings us to our last 7-drop, and that is King Triton. He is a 7-drop inkable, 5/9, which I think is the highest willpower in the game, if I'm not mistaken. 2 lore generation. He is a big body vanilla character. Unfortunately, I don't know why they didn't think he deserved the 3rd lore generation on there. I still don't know if he's playable with that 3rd lore generation on there, but we already have such solid stats on our 6-drop 3 lore generator that I think at 7, because there's a big jump from 6 to 7, that I think 3 lore generation would have been fine on this guy. As it stands, he is not constructed playable, where he may have been fringe playable with that 3rd lore generation. But, you know, again, 9 willpower. Once he hits play, he's going to be hard to take care of without just a straight banish character removal spell. And then our last card for Sapphire, we have Tamatoa. And the ability, what have we here? He is a, and then our last card that we have for Sapphire is Tamatoa. He is 8-drop inkable. He is 5 strength, 8 willpower, only 1 lore generation by default. With the ability, what have we here? When you play this character and whenever he quests, you may return an item card from your discard pile to your hand. And then the second ability, Glam, here, this character gets +1 lore generation for each item you have in play. Again, if you are playing the item deck, you probably have this guy in at least some number of copies, as he can come down and just start lore generating for a very large amount with a huge hefty body. Really gives that item deck, especially if you're ramping to 8, you're probably going to go ahead and ramp to 10. Gives it several ways to generate a lot of lore in a very short amount of time towards the end of the game. If you're not playing the item deck, this guy really is understated for an 8 drop, so you probably aren't playing him. Alright guys, so that is Sapphire. Make sure you let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of the new Sapphire cards. Until next time guys, Hobby Hero.